Welcome back to Trauma to Soul. This is part 7 of Love Addiction with Mandy. You can find us on the web at traumatosol.com or on Instagram at traumatosol. Here we go.
It's that comfort and discomfort, and that's one of the things I love the most about life, is that, like I always tell my daughter, the only constant is change.
Mm-hmm.
And although we might be well versed in pain, fuck are we well versed? You know, it's time for us to get well versed in light. It's time for us to get well versed in joy and happiness, in authenticity. And I think it is that shift. I mean, it's the same as if you move and you go to a new house. It's uncomfortable. If you change jobs, it's uncomfortable to begin with because you're not sure of who you are and what's going on. And then eventually you work for a company for 4 years and you think, wow, like, why the hell was I even nervous?
Right.
It's the same concept. You know, as human beings, we have a lot of change in our lives. And I think this year has highlighted change dramatically.
Absolutely.
You know, and people who were flexible were like, yeah, let's do this. Like, we're ready. And the people who are like us are like, whoa, like, put the brakes on. Like, I'm not ready. So you have to be flexible.
And I think a lot of the inflexibility is the way I was brought up was you get the house, like we said before, and that's the goal. And then you sink into a Barca lounger, you watch bad TV, and you roll over and you go to bed and you go to work the next day, you go to family functions, and that's it. There was never anything emotional. There was never anything soulful. There was never anything spiritual. It was, let's watch American Gladiators and Big Brother for 72 hours a week. And we can talk about other people's lives and we're not going to grow. We're trying to get to this one place of, I guess, trust and safety and, kind of block out all the stuff that's difficult to deal with and negative and just make this safe cocoon and stop change. There is no change. Your life became a rerun. It was the same sitcom,
like
and we just kept
Day.
watching the same reruns over and over. So change, we're not really taught. We're taught there's a goal. We're going to arrive at this place, and then we're going to live out the rest of our life peacefully, because we really don't like change, because change is difficult. Change is challenging. Change makes you face yourself when all we've learned our entire life was to escape who we are and ourselves. I never had a plan B. So when I got divorced and I lost my business, I was on Skid Row, the whole deal, and building myself back up. I didn't know what to do or who I was without it. My whole life was getting to this point, and I was there for about an hour and it all crumbled. And I didn't know what to do afterwards. I was looking outside. I kept looking outside. I tried to rebuild through a relationship where you're going to attach to somebody, you're going to move in together, you're going to start this whole process over. And part of me knew that it was, no matter who it was going to fail at that point, because I didn't do the work. And I didn't really, there was a part of me that did not want to go down that road again, because it didn't lead to growth. There was an end point. It was going to become stagnant. And I'm a person who constantly needs to grow and challenge myself. And unless you're going to find somebody that wants to take that journey with you, knowing at some point the path that you're on, you guys may fork and you need to just go, I understand you need to go that way.
Yeah.
And that's really hard. So change is so difficult, but that's all you're doing now, right? That's all the work that you're working on. You are not the person you were even 4 months ago, let alone 4 years.
Absolutely not. Thankfully not.
And that's that, right. And that's it. So you want to just keep moving, but it's a slow, painful process. And a lot of it is isolation. Anytime with addiction, it's giving up what's familiar and embracing what's unfamiliar. And unfamiliar is painful because you don't know where to put yourself in that space. You don't know who you are without all of these things that you've carried for so long. You're vulnerable. You've shed that armor and that tired skin that you've been carrying. And now it's like, I am just fucking raw, and I have to put my hands into these people, this group.
Yeah.
And, the first time I went to an AA meeting, forget it. I was just like, these people are fucked up. I ain't telling them anything because they're going to use it all against me. I ended up sharing at my first meeting, and like 6 people came up and said, dude, that was great, man. Give me your number. Tell me more. And I was just like,
Oh, wow.
I'm like, what the fuck does this guy want? I ain't giving him my number. Like, what? No, this is it. I ain't never
Oh,
coming back to
exactly.
this
Don't
phone again.
call
Are you
me. Don't
crazy?
message me.
But it's just, starting to get to that point and embracing the change that comes. And I think, you know, when you grew up in an unstable environment, emotional consistency is one of the most important things to me.
Oh,
And I don't
absolutely.
know what that looks like for the most part. I've had it for short periods of time, and it was the best thing that I've ever experienced. So a lot of the love addiction is locking in to that connection so that it's consistent, right? So if it,
Yes.
as soon as it wavers a little bit, all alarms go off in the body. And it's like, that's
Yes.
it. This is over. I am going to lose this. And it's just, it's sheer panic where I think embracing the change and navigating when those alarms go off is just so important. It's just really hard because nobody's really talking about love addiction. Nobody's really talking about what it's like.
No.
You know, he's an asshole, she's an asshole. That's it. End of story. You know, it's like,
Exactly.
no, we just didn't manage our emotions. We didn't have the discussion. We didn't know how to get vulnerable with each other. That's what it really is. And
But I think that's the thing. I think what people don't understand is that, and it also comes down to self-awareness. How self-aware are you to realize? I love how people love to play the blame game. Like, it's your fault. And I'm like, okay, but what does that solve? Because
well, that gives you all the responsibility and it dissolves me. That's what it
exactly,
solves.
yeah, exactly. It solves that I don't have to look inside. I mean, I'm one of those people where I'm very aware of my part in things, overly aware sometimes, where I'm like, okay, this is what I've done to fuck up. You know, this is my part of the fuck up. And then it's about the boundaries where, you know, if somebody does, it just refuses to take responsibility for their own shit, you're like, okay, you know, we're not meeting on the same level here, it's fine. But I don't play the blame game because I'm not about, oh, it's your fault, it's my fault. Like, who the fuck cares? Let's talk about what
Right.
upset you, what upset me, and how do we manage to reconnect? How do we connect from that? And I know for me, like, trust is a big one for me.
Yeah.
Trust is huge. Like, I need to know, and I think that's how I knew I wasn't ready for a relationship, because I thought, I can't trust for shit. You
Right.
know, someone sends me a message, says I'm over there. I'm immediately thinking, oh, they're shagging someone else. Not healthy.
No.
Not healthy. Like, you know, and they could literally just be doing anything.
I
So
want I want I want you to be accountable for every minute in your day. That's the only way that I'm going to feel safe. And if you set a boundary, I am going to blame you for
oh,
it.
and Joe, I have been that person, shamefully, shamefully. I've been like, where are you? And what are you doing? And who are you screwing? And it's just, that's not the other person. That's me. I've had people say to me, you realize that this means you don't trust me. And I'm like, but how? How do I not trust? And they're like, because you're questioning every fucking thing I do. And I'm like, okay. All
You
right,
got me.
let's take a step back here, you know, and it's differentiating between, because my father was a cheater, my
Right.
mother was, you know, always being cheated on. That's what I saw. I saw men doing that constantly, and I thought, well, that's what they do. So it's about knowing your triggers as well. What's setting you off? If somebody says to you, oh, I'm going to go hang with the guys, or I'm going to go hang with the girls, and your immediate reaction is complete and utter panic, is that because of that person, or is that because of your past?
Yeah, that's hard to decipher, right? Because you're constantly, you have such a history of thinking this way. That's
Yes,
It's really hard to talk yourself off that ledge. It's really
it
hard. That's one of
is.
the hardest things because again, we don't know, we're not living in reality at this point. We're living in our trauma. You know,
Yeah.
it's interesting because I had the opposite. My parents, there was no cheating. Like I didn't think cheating was a thing. Like I thought it was a small percentage of assholes that did it.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, I got my ass kicked when I started dating. Like I had no idea. Like it wasn't even in my realm of comprehension.
Yeah.
My parents, for better or worse, stuck it out.
Yeah.
No matter what, they were in this for good, and you're going to find a way to make it work. Even if it's a shitty way, they were going to find a way. So I ended up dating this girl for a couple of years, and she was sleeping with all my friends, and I didn't know it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so this was the whole thing. So now all of a sudden I go into the world like this innocent, thinking people are good and da 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 da. And the first real relationship, I get slammed.
Oh.
Now I have abandonment issues to begin with.
Yep.
And now
you have trust issues.
now, thank you. Let's just fucking pile on another issue. So now between the two of them, after that relationship, trust was really hard for me.
Yeah.
So I think you do adapt to what you had seen. So I went into life looking at it one way, you went into another way, but I ended up getting it later in life that I adapted your thoughts. Where are you? What are you doing? I know you're 10 seconds away from sleeping with somebody else. I'm never going to know it. You're a good actor. You can pretend. Everything lives on my face. Nothing lives on your face emotionally. Like,
oh, I love that. Yes.
And then I ended up choosing the same type of woman over and over and over again. And that was always my biggest fear. And the women that I wanted to be with, I couldn't be with because they were so open and real and genuine. And I'm living through trauma and guarded and codependent and walls up.
Exactly. Yeah. Not loving yourself.
Right. So it's a challenge, but I think a lot of it comes down to self-soothing, like you said. A lot of it is time alone. For me, I kind of written out what a healthy relationship looks like. And as I'm writing it, I was almost throwing up. It was so painful to realize that I don't think I could ever get to this point emotionally and allow this kind of trust and freedom. But as time goes on, when I wrote it out and saw it, and as painful as it was, I get to a point where I start gravitating towards that, and I'm making better choices and better decisions. And, you're not putting up with, it was funny because you said when you got to group, the last relationship was gaslighting, made you doubt yourself. For me, when I had my big breakthrough, it was the same thing. I kept questioning myself in a relationship. I'm like, I'm being as me as I've ever been, but it's not good enough. And I'm starting to feel crazy that what I'm feeling is being told is something different. And part of me, I think, stayed in it because I was trying to figure out, am I nuts? Do I need to change? Is this person just lighting me up? What is it? And then when you get to the point where you actually see it crystal clear and you see how bad you are looking at yourself for actually staying through this for this long.
Oh, yes.
There's a light bulb, but the healing after that, I don't think I was any more raw and vulnerable at the end of that. I bottomed out, and thank God for that bottom, one of many. I hope I don't have to go that deep again. My bottom is rising. So you don't have to go as dark, but you have to go down into that darkness, into that depth, into that shitty place that you don't want to go, and just shine a light on everything you've been hiding, and then light that up, and it just kind of rises and dissipates. It fucking sucks doing it, but
it does.
Man, at the end of the day, and you're just so much lighter, and life just gets so much better. I do miss that addictive part. And the funny thing is, I was thinking about it in the last 2 years that I really haven't been dating. That magical part seems to have been slowly dying in me. And I was sad about it because it was the best feeling I had ever had on earth.
Exactly.
But it was also one of the worst things that drove me to the worst places. So the grieving so my definition of love has to have had changed, and it's slowly changing and evolving. It's better in some ways, but it doesn't feel as good in others because I'm not getting that fix. It's like somebody took the heroin away, and knocked me down to Valium.
But this is the thing. I mean, someone said to me once, we were talking about relationships, and I said, but it's boring. And they were like, what do you mean it's boring? And I was like, but it's boring. It's so mundane. Because you get addicted to the drama. You get addicted to the high. You're like, there's no arguments. There's no makeup sex. There's no that fire, that, and it's all those things that are misrepresented. That's not
Yes.
what it is. We get that high off of that conflict and the conflict resolution. I mean, it's not really a resolution, but I actually said, and that's what she actually just came right out and said to me, well, because you're addicted to drama. And I was like, what?
Thank you.
Yeah, I was like, I sat there for a moment and I was like, I'm deeply offended and yet just so moved. And that's the case. It's, a lot of people, we get that high because it's attention.
Yeah.
And it's immediate. And I know for myself, I've done that. I've gotten into so many arguments and fights and rows, and it's all this pain. Now I don't feel that way.
Yeah.
If somebody approaches me and they're like, this and this and this, I'm like, cool, let's talk about it.
Right.
Let's resolve it. Back then, I was a crazy freak. I would be like riled in a minute, ready to go. Now I'm like, it doesn't bring me joy.
No, you're less defensive and you've moved out of trauma into soul.
Exactly.
But moving I don't know where that came from. Never thought about it before, never said it, never written it.
Channeling spirits, I'm telling you. Goosebumps.
The problem when you move into soul is that fucking trauma wants to pull you back because that's your first language.
Exactly.
And when it pulls me back in, it's such a hard pull. It is such an immediate pull. It is just a reaction. But the further I'm gravitating towards soul and out of trauma, the less of an immediate knee-jerk defensive reaction it is. Like I'm able to absorb whatever information that I got without wanting to go hide in a hole or just come at you with anger. Like there's actually middle ground now where it's like, okay, I might have been an asshole. I might not have.
But this is the thing.
Like there's like a rational pause. I did a podcast. I think it was like my first episode I've never listened to it after I recorded, but it's called Pause at the Trauma Response. And there's a split second that you have to not react.
Yes.
It has taken me years to figure out how not to have that reaction. Mine is usually a shame spiral.
Yes, exactly.
Inward. But every once in a while, you may get that defensive pushback. And then that's never me. And people always they pull back and they're like, holy shit, where did he come from? But it's so much healing when you move from trauma to soul, and it's an adjustment, and it takes time to get used to walking in those new shoes because you're not comfortable and confident. It's a second language. It's so hard to live it and speak it and hear it and understand it. Where when you get emotional, we always go back to that first language. And I don't think I'm ever fully going to be able, you're never fully healed, right? There's always more depth. There's always more soul to go to. And there's always going to be that pull. And when you don't take care of yourself and you don't eat right and you're not living a healthy, happy, emotional stability, our first reaction is going to get to be pulled back there. Learning how not to do that, I think, is the key to every addiction and happiness, especially for people with trauma.
It's so true. And I think relapse, which is quite an interesting word for me, but relapse for me is so important because I think a lot of people, like I remember when I started recovery, I was like, yes, I'm going to ace this, like 80% and higher, motherfucker. Like, let's do this.
Watch me go, baby.
Yeah, woo, I'm going to own this. And then I relapsed and I actually sat and I thought, oh my God, like it's over. It's over. I've fucked up. I'm done. I'm still the same person. I did all this fucking work and for what? Like, because you self-berate and you self-hate and you go back to that place. And I think your entire life, if you come from abuse, if you come from trauma, that is going to be your instinctual response. It's not going to change. But like you say, when you have that moment where you're not reacting, you're responding. And that's something that's been huge for me. Like if somebody says something that rubs me up the wrong way, or it makes me feel uncomfortable, I take that moment and I go, okay, I can react to this or I can respond to it. And I don't always get it right. And as addicts, we're not going to get it right all the time.
No, we're not. And, you know, the best quote I ever heard in a room was relapse is part of recovery.
Oh, yes, exactly.
And what I find is every relapse, I never go down to the depths of the previous one. I've learned so much. So, you know, listen, I hate relapse. I hate going back, but sometimes it's really important. It's an ego check. It's a soul check. You know, it's a gut check. It's a self-checking system of you actually in your previous relapse, you get to see how far you really came, how well you dealt with something that you were in for so long, you stopped doing, you went back into it. And it's a way to teach your brain, your body, your cells to realize I can make a mistake, I can slip, and I can recover. And not only recover, but recover better than I ever have before.
And faster. You know, I find that what used to get me down for weeks on end is something that takes me like a day or two now. I'm like, okay, process done, ready to move on. Like it's dramatic. I can't actually tell you how dramatic that change is, because now, I mean, what used to absolutely floor me and have me down for weeks doesn't have that effect anymore, because you're seeing it from that point of self-awareness. And you're like, okay, this is coming from this is stuff I haven't dealt with. This is stuff I still need to work on. That is the best place to be. And I really wish that people would understand that, because when I talk to people, because I'm very open about it, and if somebody asks me, I'll tell them. And, you know, they're like, oh, you know, you wrote this and I read it and I wanted to ask about this and this. And I talk to them, because I'm like, listen, you have to become self-aware enough to know where those things are coming from. You need to find that out for yourself. Like, I can give you all the research I've done. I can give you all the material. You can join the groups, you can share the stories, but you have to do the work. You have to, and I say to them, like, I have relapsed, I have gone back, not as badly as I did before. I rebounded like super quick, and that's growth. And so many people hold on to their stories with such, you know, control. And I think if you put only 1 ounce of that energy into your healing, you would already make such a phenomenal difference.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, that's it. It's letting go of the story and not going back there and keep telling yourself the same thing over and over. We are emotionally stuck at a point in our life, and we didn't grow emotionally past it. And it's a childlike state when it happened, and we got stuck there. So emotionally, we are fucking children in adult bodies walking around like pretending we know what the fuck is going on, when really we are 2.5 years old screaming, I want to feel good, I have needs, fill me up.
Exactly.
And and now we have to do it ourselves. Okay, that wraps up part 7 of Love Addiction with Mandy. We'll be back next time with part 8. See you then.